The morning mist still clung to the muddy roads when Captain Marcus Thorne arrived at the gates of his family estate. His uniform was torn and blood-stained, his face covered in dirt from 3 months of brutal fighting on the northern frontier. The war had ended suddenly, a peace treaty signed just 2 days ago, allowing him to return home weeks earlier than expected. Marcus had sent no word of his early arrival. He wanted to surprise his household, especially his young wife Eleanor, who must have been worried sick during his absence. As he approached the manor house, he noticed something strange. No guard stood at their posts. The usually well-lit entrance was shrouded in darkness, with only a single candle flickering in an upstairs window. He tied his exhausted horse to a post and moved quietly through the servants' entrance. The kitchen was empty, which was unusual even for this early hour. Where was Mrs. Henderson, the cook who always started her day before dawn? Where were the stable boys who should have been preparing for the morning routines? As Marcus climbed the back stairs, his soldier's instincts kicked in. Something was wrong. The house felt different, almost abandoned. He reached the main hallway and noticed light seeping from under the door of the blue drawing room, a room that was rarely used except for important gatherings. He heard voices inside. One belonged to Sarah, the young maid who had joined their household just before he left for war. She was barely 18, with striking green eyes and auburn hair that she always kept neatly pinned under her cap. Marcus had hired her himself after her father, one of his former soldiers, had died in battle. He felt responsible for the girl and wanted to give her honest work. The other voice made his blood run cold. It was deep, commanding, and definitely male. Marcus pressed his ear against the door, his heart pounding. What he heard next shocked him to his core. "You must finish it tonight," the man was saying. "Everything depends on this." "I know," Sarah replied, her usually soft voice now firm and determined. "But we need to be careful. If anyone discovers what we've done, no one will discover anything," the man interrupted. "The captain is still at war, his wife suspects nothing, and the other servants are too frightened to ask questions." Marcus felt his hand move instinctively to his sword. His wife? What did Eleanor have to do with this? And why were the servants frightened? He shifted his weight, and the floorboard creaked under his boot. The voices inside stopped abruptly. Marcus held his breath, waiting. After what felt like an eternity, he heard footsteps approaching the door. He quickly ducked into an alcove, hiding in the shadows just as the door opened. Sarah emerged first, carrying something wrapped in dark cloth. Even in the dim light, Marcus could see her face was pale and drawn, nothing like the cheerful girl he remembered. Behind her walked a man Marcus had never seen before, tall, well-dressed, with cold gray eyes that seemed to scan every shadow. "Remember," the man whispered, placing a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Dawn is our deadline. If you fail, I won't fail," Sarah said, pulling away from his touch. "I've come too far to fail now." They parted ways, the man heading toward the main entrance while Sarah hurried up the stairs toward the family quarters. Marcus remained hidden, his mind racing. What deadline? What task required such secrecy? And, most importantly, what danger had invaded his home while he was gone? He decided to follow Sarah. Moving silently, skills honed from months of night raids and ambushes, he tracked her through the corridors. She stopped outside his own bedchamber, the room he shared with Eleanor. Sarah looked around nervously, then pulled a key from her pocket. A key to his private chambers? Marcus felt rage building inside him. How did Maid get such a key? He watched as she unlocked the door and slipped inside. Unable to contain himself any longer, he followed. The room was dark except for moonlight streaming through the windows. His bed was empty. Eleanor wasn't there. Sarah moved to his desk, setting down her wrapped bundle. She lit a candle and began unwrapping the object, revealing tools Marcus recognized immediately. Lockpicks, thin blades, and small vials of what could only be poison. "Stop right there," Marcus commanded, stepping into the light. Sarah spun around, her face a mask of shock and fear. The candle in her hand trembled, casting dancing shadows on the walls. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, Sarah's expression changed, shifting from fear to something Marcus couldn't quite read. Was it relief? Captain Thorne, she whispered. You're alive. Obviously. Marcus replied coldly, his hand on his sword hilt. Now explain what you're doing in my chambers with assassin's tools. Sarah glanced at the door, then back at him. You don't understand. I'm not here to harm anyone. I'm here to save your wife. Save Eleanor? From what? From a man who just left. From the conspiracy that has taken over your house. From a fate worse than death. Sarah's voice broke. Captain, your wife is in terrible danger, and I'm the only one who can help her. But we don't have much time. Dawn is coming, and when it does, a scream pierced the night, coming from somewhere deep in the house. It was a woman's scream, filled with terror and pain. Marcus recognized it immediately. Eleanor. He turned to run toward the sound, but Sarah grabbed his arm with surprising strength. Wait, you can't just charge in. They're expecting that. Please, Captain, let me explain. There's so much you don't know about what's been happening since you left. Your wife, she discovered something she shouldn't have. And now they're going to make her disappear unless we stop them. Another scream echoed through the halls. Marcus looked at Sarah, torn between his instinct to rush to his wife's aid and the realization that this young maid might be the key to understanding the danger they faced. You have 30 seconds to convince me, he growled. Sarah took a deep breath. The man you saw, his name is Lord Blackwood. He came here a month after you left, claiming to be a distant cousin of your wife. He brought documents, proof of kinship, and Eleanor welcomed him. But he's not who he claims to be. He's part of a group that calls themselves the Order of the Silver Dawn. They believe your family possesses something valuable, something that could change the course of the war. The war is over, Marcus said impatiently. No, Captain. That's what they want everyone to believe. The peace treaty is a farce, a distraction. The real war is just beginning, and it's not between nations. It's between those who seek to control ancient powers and those who would keep them hidden. Ancient powers? You're talking nonsense. Another scream, weaker this time. Marcus couldn't wait any longer. He pushed past Sarah and ran toward the sound, his boots echoing in the empty corridors. Sarah followed, her tools clinking in her pockets. They reached the cellar door to find it locked from the inside. Marcus could hear voices beyond, Lord Blackwood's commanding tone, and others he didn't recognize. And beneath it all, soft sobbing that tore at his heart. Stand back, Marcus ordered, preparing to break down the door. No, Sarah hissed. There are 5 of them down there, all armed. You're exhausted from battle, and they have your wife as hostage. We need a different approach. Then what do you suggest? Sarah pulled out a small vial from her collection. This will create smoke, lots of it, enough to confuse them and give us cover. But, Captain, you need to know something before we go down there. Your wife, she's pregnant. 3 months along. That's why they moved up their timeline. They need her alive for now, but only until the child is born. Marcus felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. Pregnant? Eleanor was carrying his child, and these monsters were using her for some twisted purpose? His rage transformed into something colder, more dangerous. Give me the vial, he said quietly. Sarah handed it over without hesitation. When the smoke fills the room, go for your wife. I'll handle Blackwood. You? You're just a maid. No, Captain. I'm not. Sarah's green eyes blazed with determination. I'm the daughter of Sergeant John Hartley, whom you tried to save at the Battle of Crow's Ridge. When he died, you sent money to my family. But I didn't become a maid out of gratitude. I came here because my father's last letter warned of a conspiracy targeting noble families. I've been investigating ever since, trying to protect your household. Marcus stared at her, remembering the brave sergeant who had died protecting their position. He had indeed sent money to the man's family, never knowing one of his daughters would risk her life to repay the debt. Your father would be proud, he said finally. Save that for after we rescue your wife, Sarah replied, pulling out 2 thin blades. Ready? Marcus nodded. Together, they approached the cellar door. From below, they could hear chanting in a language Marcus didn't recognize. Whatever ritual Blackwood was performing, they had to stop it now. Sarah picked the lock with practiced ease. The door swung open silently, revealing stone steps descending into flickering torchlight. The chanting grew louder, and with it, Eleanor's terrified whimpers. Marcus met Sarah's eyes one last time. Then he uncorked the vial and threw it down the stairs. The effect was immediate. Thick, acrid smoke billowed up, followed by shouts of alarm and confusion. Marcus charged down the steps, Sarah close behind. Through the smoke, he could see figures moving, coughing, and stumbling. In the center of the room, illuminated by strange symbols drawn on the floor, Eleanor knelt with her hands bound, her nightgown torn and dirty. "Eleanor!" Marcus roared, fighting his way toward her. Lord Blackwood emerged from the smoke like a specter, a curved blade in his hand. "Captain Thorne, how inconvenient. You were supposed to die in battle like a good soldier." "Sorry to disappoint," Marcus snarled, drawing his sword. The two men clashed in the smoky chamber, while Sarah darted through the chaos, her blades finding targets with deadly precision. The other conspirators, caught off guard and blinded by smoke, fell quickly to her attacks. Marcus fought with the fury of a man protecting everything he held dear. Blackwood was skilled, but he hadn't spent months fighting for his life in muddy trenches. He hadn't learned to kill with desperate efficiency. Their blades met again and again, sparks flying in the darkness. "You have no idea what you're interfering with," Blackwood gasped between strikes. "The power in your bloodline." "I don't care about power," Marcus replied, driving him back. "I care about my wife." Behind them, Sarah had reached Eleanor and was cutting her bonds. But as the smoke began to clear, Marcus saw more figures entering the cellar, reinforcements Blackwood had kept in reserve. "Sarah, get her out!" Marcus shouted, parrying a vicious thrust from Blackwood. "Not without you," Sarah called back. "That's an order." Sarah hesitated only a moment before half-carrying, half-dragging Eleanor toward a side passage Marcus hadn't noticed before. Smart girl, she had scouted escape routes. With Eleanor safe, Marcus could focus entirely on Blackwood. Their duel intensified, moving across the symbol-covered floor. But exhaustion was taking its toll. 3 months of warfare, the ride home, and now this battle. Marcus could feel his strength waning. Blackwood sensed it too. His attacks became more aggressive, pushing Marcus toward the wall. "You cannot stop what has already begun," he hissed. "The child she carries will be ours, one way or another." "Over my dead body," Marcus growled. "That could be arranged." Blackwood feinted left, then struck right. Marcus, slow by fatigue, couldn't fully dodge. The blade caught his shoulder, sending fire through his arm. He dropped to one knee, sword clattering from nerveless fingers. Blackwood raised his blade for the killing blow. "Farewell, Captain." A knife sprouted from Blackwood's chest. He looked down in shock, then crumpled forward. Behind him stood Sarah, another blade ready. "I told you I'd handle him," she said, helping Marcus to his feet. Around them, the remaining conspirators fled into the pre-dawn darkness. The immediate threat was over, but Marcus knew this was far from finished. Whatever this Order of the Silver Dawn wanted with his family, they wouldn't give up easily. "Where's Eleanor?" he asked. "Safe, hidden in the old wine cellar. Mrs. Henderson and some loyal servants are with her." Sarah examined his wounded shoulder with practiced efficiency. "This needs treatment, but you'll live." As she bandaged his wound, Marcus studied the symbols on the floor. They seemed to shift and move in the torchlight, making his eyes water. What is all this? What power was Blackwood talking about? Sarah finished the bandage before answering. "I don't know everything, but I've pieced together some of it. Your family, Captain, has a secret history. Your ancestors were guardians of something ancient, something that should remain buried. But there are always those who seek such power for themselves. And Eleanor, the baby, your bloodlines combine, perhaps. Or maybe they believe the child will be born with abilities." Sarah shrugged. Madmen often see patterns where none exist. But they believe it, and that makes them dangerous. Marcus stood slowly, testing his shoulder. It hurt, but he could function. "We need to get Eleanor somewhere safe." And We need answers. Agreed. But first we should burn these symbols. Whatever ritual they were attempting, best not to leave it half-finished. Together, they scattered the torches across the mystical drawings, watching as flames consumed the careful work. The smoke that rose seemed unnatural, forming shapes that hurt to look at before dissipating. As they climbed back to the main house, dawn was indeed breaking, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Marcus had returned from one war only to find another waiting in his own home. But this time, he wouldn't face it alone. "Thank you," he said to Sarah as they reached the kitchen. "You risked everything for people who were strangers to you." "Not strangers," Sarah corrected. "You gave my family hope when my father died. You gave me purpose when I had none. Besides, I couldn't stand by and watch innocent people suffer." They found Eleanor in the wine cellar, surrounded by the few servants who had remained loyal. When she saw Marcus, she broke down in tears, throwing herself into his arms despite his injury. "I thought you were dead," she sobbed. "They told me you'd been killed, that I was alone. Shoo. I'm here now. You're safe. We're safe." He held her tight, feeling the slight swell of her belly against him. His child. Their child. "Marcus, I have to tell you something. About my family, about why they came." "Later," he said gently. "First, we need to leave. This house isn't safe anymore." Mrs. Henderson, the elderly cook, stepped forward. "Begging your pardon, Captain, but where will you go?" These order folks seem to have eyes everywhere. Marcus looked at Sarah, who nodded slightly. "I know a place," she said. "My uncle has a farm in the north, isolated and defensible. He's also a former soldier, one who knows how to keep secrets." "Then we leave within the hour," Marcus decided. "Take only what's essential. Mrs. Henderson, you and any servant who wishes to come are welcome. But I won't blame anyone who chooses to stay behind." One by one, the servants stepped forward. All of them, even old Thomas the groundskeeper, leaning on his walking stick. "We've served the Thorne family for generations," he said simply. "We're not abandoning you now." Marcus felt a surge of emotion. These people, some of whom had known him since childhood, were willing to follow him into danger out of loyalty alone. He wouldn't let them down. As they prepared to leave, Sarah pulled him aside. "There's something else you should know." Blackwood mentioned dawn as a deadline because that's when the next phase was supposed to begin. "Across the country, other families like yours are being targeted. The Order is making its move. Then, we need to warn them." "Already done. I sent ravens to every noble house I could think of before you arrived. Some will believe, some won't. But at least they'll be on guard." Marcus marveled at this young woman's foresight. "You make a fine soldier, Sarah Hartley. I prefer to think of myself as a protector, Captain. Now, shall we get your wife to safety?" They loaded what supplies they could onto a wagon. Eleanor bundled in warm cloaks despite the rising sun. As the small convoy prepared to leave, Marcus took one last look at his family home. He had left it 3 months ago as a soldier going to war. He returned to find the war had followed him home, taking a form he never could have imagined. But he had also found an unexpected ally in Sarah, whose courage and quick thinking had saved them all. The maid who wasn't really a maid, who had infiltrated his household to protect it from within. Her father would indeed be proud. As they rode away, Eleanor's hand in his, Marcus made a silent vow. Whatever this Order of the Silver Dawn wanted, whatever ancient secrets his family supposedly guarded, he would keep his wife and unborn child safe. The battlefield had taught him how to fight with sword and strategy. Now he would learn to fight an enemy that lurked in shadows and dealt in mysteries. The sun climbed higher, burning away the morning mist. Behind them, smoke rose from the cellar where dark rituals had been attempted and thwarted. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also hope. They were alive, they were together, and they had allies. The war for his family's future had begun. 3 weeks had passed since their escape from the Thorne estate. The small group had taken refuge at the Hartley farm, a modest but well-fortified property nestled in a valley between 2 hills. Sarah's uncle, Robert Hartley, had welcomed them without question, his weathered face showing only grim determination when told of the Order's threat. Marcus stood on the farmhouse porch, watching the sunrise paint the hills in shades of amber and crimson. His shoulder had healed well under Sarah's care, leaving only a faint scar as a reminder of their escape. Eleanor slept peacefully inside, the stress of recent events making her pregnancy more difficult than it should have been. "Can't sleep again?" Sarah's voice came from behind him. Marcus turned to find her dressed in men's clothing, practical trousers, and a loose shirt that allowed for easier movement. She had abandoned her maid's attire the day they arrived, revealing more of her true nature with each passing day. "Old habits from the war," Marcus replied. "Dawn was always when the attacks came." Sarah joined him on the porch, her green eyes scanning the horizon with the same vigilance. "My uncle's men report strange movements in the valley. Riders who appear and disappear. We're being watched. I expected as much. The order won't give up easily." "No, they won't." Sarah pulled a letter from her pocket. "This arrived by Raven last night, from Lord Ashford in the east." Marcus took the letter, recognizing the seal. Lord Ashford was an old friend, someone he'd served with in his younger days. The message was brief, but alarming. "My family attacked. Wife and children safe. Order stronger than we thought. Trust no one. Heading to capital to seek King's protection. Suggest you do same." "Ashford, the capital might already be compromised," Sarah said, reading his expression. "If the order has infiltrated noble houses, why not the royal court? Then where do we go? We can't stay here forever. Your uncle has been generous, but we're putting his people at risk." Sarah was quiet for a moment, then said, "There might be another option, but you won't like it. Try me. My father, before he died, mentioned a group that opposed the order. They call themselves the Keepers. They've protected the ancient sites and artifacts for generations, keeping them from those who would abuse their power. And you know how to find these Keepers?" "Not exactly, but I know where to start looking." Sarah hesitated. "There's an old monastery in the mountains, abandoned for decades. Local legends say strange things happen there. Lights in the night, voices on the wind. Most people avoid it. Sounds like exactly where mystical guardians might hide," Marcus said dryly. "My thoughts exactly. But it's a 2-day journey through difficult terrain, and Eleanor can't travel in her condition." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Every option seemed to lead to more danger. "We need more information before making any moves. What else have you learned about the order?" Sarah glanced around, ensuring they were alone, then spoke quietly. "More than I've told you. Captain, have you ever wondered why some noble families have such long, unbroken bloodlines? Why certain names appear again and again throughout history, always in positions of power or influence? Lucky genetics and good marriages? Or something more? What if I told you that some bloodlines carry more than just titles and wealth? What if they carry memories, abilities, connections to forces most people can't even imagine?" Marcus frowned. "You're saying my family has what? Magic in our blood?" "Not magic exactly. More like potential. The ability to interact with certain artifacts, to understand languages that should be long dead, to sense things others cannot." Sarah watched him carefully. "Have you never experienced anything unusual? Dreams that felt too real? Knowledge you shouldn't possess?" Marcus started to deny it, then stopped. There had been moments during the war, times when he'd known an ambush was coming before any sign appeared, nights when he'd dreamed of battles yet to come in perfect detail. He dismissed it as soldier's intuition, but what if? "I see I've struck a nerve," Sarah said softly. "The Order believes these bloodline gifts can be harnessed, concentrated. That's why they want your child. A combination of 2 ancient lines might produce abilities they can use for their own purposes." "Use how?" "Power, Captain. The eternal human obsession. The artifacts and sites the Keepers guard aren't just historical curiosities. They're functional, waiting for the right person with the right blood to activate them. Imagine weapons that never miss their target, shields that can't be broken, ways to communicate instantly across vast distances. That's impossible. Is it? You've seen their symbols, felt their wrongness. You know there's more to this world than what we're taught in schools and churches. Before Marcus could respond, a shout came from the farmyard. Uncle Robert was calling for them, his voice urgent. They rushed down to find him standing with one of his farmhands, both men armed and agitated. Riders approaching, Robert said tersely. Dozen of them, maybe more, coming fast from the south road. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Order, could be, or could be regular bandits drawn by rumors of nobles hiding here. Robert spat in the dirt. Either way, they're not coming for tea and conversation. How long? 20 minutes, maybe less. Marcus's mind raced through options. The farmhouse was defendable, but not against a determined assault. They could flee, but Eleanor was in no condition for a chase on horseback. Which left? We fight, he decided. Robert, get your men positioned. Windows and doorways crossfire patterns. Sarah, wake the others. Get Eleanor to the cellar with Mrs. Henderson and the servants. Then arm yourself and take the upper floor. You're our best shot with a bow. Sarah nodded and ran inside. Robert was already barking orders to his men, farmers transforming into soldiers with practiced ease. These were veterans, Marcus realized, men who'd served under Robert in younger days. The order had chosen the wrong farm to attack. Within minutes, the farmhouse had become a small fortress. Marcus positioned himself at a front window, his sword close at hand, but a crossbow ready first. The waiting was always the worst part, the tension before violence exploded. The riders came into view, moving in formation down the dirt road. They wore no uniforms, but their coordinated movement betrayed military training. At their head rode a woman Marcus didn't recognize, her dark hair flowing behind her like a war banner. They stopped just outside effective bow range. The woman rode forward alone, hands visible and empty. I seek Captain Marcus Thorne, she called out. I come in peace, with information he needs to hear. Information from the order isn't worth the breath to speak it, Marcus shouted back. The woman laughed, a surprisingly warm sound. The order? Captain, if I were with the order, would I approach so openly? No, I represent the keepers. My name is Lyra Moon Whisperer, and Sarah Hartley's letter reached us 3 days ago. Marcus glanced up to where Sarah crouched with her bow. She gave a slight shake of her head. She hadn't sent any letter to the keepers, which meant this was a trap, or prove it, Marcus called out. Tell me something only the keepers would know. Lyra smiled. Your great-grandmother's name was Alara Thorne, born Alara Starweaver. She could speak to ravens and see through their eyes. Your grandfather, Marcus the Elder, once used an artifact called the Compass of Souls to navigate through a blizzard and save an entire village. Your father destroyed that same compass rather than let it fall into the wrong hands during the border wars. Shall I continue? Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Those were family stories, tales told in whispers and never written down. His father had always said their family had responsibilities beyond titles and lands, but Marcus had thought it was just noblesse oblige. Let her approach, he decided. But only her. The others stay back. Lyra dismounted gracefully and walked toward the farmhouse, her movements fluid and confident. Up close, Marcus could see she was older than she'd first appeared, fine lines around eyes that seemed to hold ancient knowledge. Robert opened the door cautiously, keeping his weapon ready. Lyra entered with a nod of thanks, her gaze immediately finding Marcus. Captain, we have much to discuss and little time. The order knows you're here. My riders, and I barely stayed ahead of their forces. How many? 50, maybe more. And they have a blood mage with them. At Marcus's blank look, she elaborated. One who can use the old powers without artifacts. Dangerous beyond measure. Then, we need to leave. Now. Agreed. That's why I'm here. The keepers can offer sanctuary, but there are conditions. Name them. Lyra's expression grew serious. You must agree to learn the truth about your heritage. All of it. The glorious and the terrible. And when your child is born, they must be trained in the old ways to understand their gifts and the responsibilities that come with them. And if I refuse, then we leave you to face the order alone. I'm sorry, but we cannot risk exposure for those who won't commit to our cause. Before Marcus could respond, Eleanor's voice came from the cellar stairs. Marcus? What's happening? She emerged despite his earlier orders, one hand on her swollen belly, the other gripping the doorframe for support. Lyra's eyes widened. By the ancient stars, Lady Thorne, your aura is extraordinary. She turned to Marcus. You have no idea what you've created, do you? This child will be unlike any born in generations. Stop talking about my baby like it's some kind of weapon, Eleanor said sharply, moving to stand beside her husband. Not a weapon, my lady. A bridge. Between the old world and the new. Between power and wisdom. The Order sees only the power. We see the potential for balance. Sarah had come down from her position, bow still in hand. If you're really with the Keepers, you'll know the phrase my father taught me. The words he said would identify friend from foe. Lyra looked at her appraisingly. You're John Hartley's daughter. You have his eyes. She paused, then spoke in a language Marcus didn't recognize. The words seemed to resonate in the air, leaving echoes of meaning just beyond understanding. Sarah lowered her bow. She's genuine. Then, we have a decision to make, Marcus said. And we need to make it now. A horn sounded in the distance, the warning signal from Robert's outermost scout. The Order's forces had been spotted. Captain, Roberts said urgently. Whatever you're doing, do it fast. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they're here. Marcus looked at Eleanor, seeing his own thoughts reflected in her eyes. They were tired of running, tired of reacting. Maybe it was time to learn why they were being hunted, to gain the knowledge to fight back properly. We'll come with you, he decided. But everyone comes. My wife, our servants, all of Robert's people who wish to leave. Lyra frowned. That's many more than we planned for. That's the deal. We all go, or none of us do. She considered for a moment, then nodded. Very well, but we leave now. My riders know hidden paths through the hills. We can avoid the main force if we're quick. The evacuation was swift but organized. Years of military experience served them well as they loaded essential supplies onto horses and wagons. Eleanor rode in a specially prepared carriage, Mrs. Henderson beside her. The servants who'd followed them from the Thorne estate looked frightened but determined. As they prepared to depart, Marcus pulled Robert aside. You don't have to come. This isn't your fight. The older man snorted. Like hell it isn't. Sarah's my blood, and you've become family these past weeks. Besides, I'm curious about these Keepers. Always wondered if the old stories were true. They moved out in a long column, Lyra's riders forming protective wings on either side. Sarah rode near Marcus, her eyes constantly scanning for danger. The path Lyra chose was barely more than a game trail, winding up into the hills through dense forest. They'd been traveling for an hour when the attack came. It started with arrows from the trees, black-shafted and humming with unnatural force. Lyra's riders responded instantly, some raising shields that glowed with faint light, others returning fire with their own enchanted weapons. Blood Mage, Lyra shouted. Everyone down. A figure emerged from the forest, hands wreathed in crimson energy. The air itself seemed to thicken around him, making it hard to breathe. Marcus recognized the feeling from the cellar ritual, wrongness given form. The Blood Mage spoke a word that hit like a physical blow. Horses screamed and reared. Several riders fell, clutching their heads. Marcus felt warmth on his upper lip and realized his nose was bleeding. But Sarah was moving. She'd leaped from her horse and was running directly at the mage, two knives in her hands. The mage saw her coming and raised a hand dismissively, sending a bolt of red lightning her way. Sarah Dove rolled and came up still running. The lightning struck where she'd been, leaving smoking earth. She was almost on him when he spoke another word of power. This time Sarah couldn't dodge. The force caught her mid-stride, lifting her off her feet. She hung suspended in the air, gasping. No! Marcus spurred his horse forward, but Lyra caught his arm. Wait, she commanded. Look! Sarah was smiling. Even suspended by malevolent magic, she was smiling. And Her hands were moving, tracing patterns in the air. The blood mage's eyes widened in shock. "Impossible," he breathed. "You're not awakened. You can't." Sarah spoke a single word, her voice carrying despite the chaos. The blood mage's spell shattered like glass. She dropped to the ground, landed in a crouch, and threw both knives in one fluid motion. The mage tried to deflect them with magic, but Sarah's blades flew true. One took him in the throat, the other in the heart. He fell backward, crimson energy dissipating into the air. The remaining Order forces, seeing their mage fall, retreated into the forest. Lyra's riders let them go, focusing instead on tending the wounded. Marcus dismounted and ran to Sarah, who was kneeling where the mage had fallen. "How?" he asked simply. Sarah looked up at him, her green eyes bright with something that might have been tears or might have been power. "My father taught me more than phrases, Captain. He taught me to hide what I was until the moment it was needed most." She stood slowly. "I've been awakened since I was 12. I've just been very good at pretending otherwise." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you needed to make your choice freely without feeling manipulated. And because—" She paused, looking toward where Eleanor's carriage waited. "Because your wife needs to trust me completely for what's coming." Being a simple maid helped with that. Lyra approached, approval clear on her face. "John Hartley's daughter indeed. That was masterfully done. The Order just lost one of their strongest pieces, and they don't even know who took it off the board." They resumed their journey, moving faster now. The hidden paths wound ever upward, toward peaks shrouded in mist. As night began to fall, they crested a final ridge, and Marcus saw their destination. The monastery sat nestled in a valley between three peaks, its ancient stones seeming to glow with inner light. Gardens stretched out around it, green and flourishing despite the altitude. Figures in hooded robes moved between buildings, tending to tasks with quiet purpose. "Welcome to Haven," Lyra said, "the last sanctuary of the Keepers. Here you'll find answers to questions you haven't even thought to ask yet." As they descended toward the monastery, Eleanor reached out from her carriage to take Marcus's hand. "Are we doing the right thing?" she asked quietly. Marcus squeezed her fingers gently. "I don't know, but for the first time since this started, we're choosing our path instead of just reacting. That has to count for something." The monastery gates opened as they approached, revealing a courtyard filled with more robed figures. Some pushed back their hoods, revealing faces of every age and nationality. All watched the newcomers with expressions of welcome mixed with assessment. An elderly woman stepped forward, her white hair braided with silver threads. "Captain Thorne, Lady Eleanor, we've been expecting you for longer than you might imagine. I am Mother Serena, leader of this sanctuary." Her eyes moved to Eleanor's belly. "And you carry the hope we've waited generations to see." "I carry my child," Eleanor said firmly. "Nothing more, nothing less." Mother Serena smiled. "Of course." Forgive an old woman her enthusiasm. "You must be exhausted. Let us get you settled, then we can speak of weightier matters." They were led to comfortable quarters, a far cry from their recent accommodations. Eleanor sank gratefully into a proper bed, while Mrs. Henderson fussed over her. The servants were given their own rooms, and Marcus noticed several keepers already engaging them in friendly conversation. "They're very organized," Sarah observed, joining Marcus on a balcony that overlooked the valley. "Almost like they've been preparing for us specifically." Marcus agreed. "I don't like feeling like a piece on someone else's game board." "Then, learn the rules," Sarah suggested. "Become a player instead of piece." Before Marcus could respond, a young keeper approached. "Captain Thorne, Mother Serena requests your presence. You and Miss Hartley both, if she's willing." They followed the messenger through corridors that seemed older than they should be, the stones worn smooth by countless feet over countless years. Tapestries depicted scenes that hurt to look at directly. Battles between forces Marcus couldn't name. Rituals conducted under alien stars. Mother Serena waited in a circular chamber, its domed ceiling painted with constellations Marcus didn't recognize. Other keepers stood around the room's perimeter, creating an oddly formal atmosphere. "Captain," Mother Serena began, "before we proceed, I must ask, what do you know of your family's true history?" "Less than I thought," Marcus admitted. "Until recently, I believed we were simply old nobility with a tradition of military service. A convenient fiction your grandfather created after the Purge of 1453. Tell me, did your father ever mention the Covenant of Stars?" "No." "The binding of the first dawn?" "No." "The price paid at Shadowmere?" "None of this means anything to me." Mother Serena sighed. "Then we truly must start at the beginning." She gestured, and one of the keepers brought forward an ancient book. "This is the Chronicle of Houses. Your family appears on nearly every page for the last 1,000 years. Warriors, yes, but also scholars, mages, and, most importantly, guardians." She opened the book, revealing illustrations that seemed to move in the candlelight. "The thorn line was established to guard the threshold, the barrier between our world and others. Your ancestors stood watch against things that would devour reality itself if given the chance. And you believe these fairy tales?" Marcus couldn't help his skepticism. "I believe in historical records, Captain, in documented events, in artifacts that still function after millennia." She turned to Sarah. "Tell him about London, child." Sarah looked uncomfortable. "There was an incident. 5 years ago, something broke through in the old city. The Order tried to control it, to harness its power. They failed, and," Mother Serena prompted, "and my father was part of the group that stopped it, that fought it back and sealed the breach." Sarah met Marcus's eyes. "7 men went into that darkness. Only 3 came out. My father was never the same after. That's when he started teaching me the old ways, preparing me. Because he knew the Order would try again," Mother Serena said. "They always do. They see power and reach for it, never understanding that some doors should remain closed. That's why the Guardians were created. That's why bloodlines like yours were cultivated and protected." Marcus felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath him. "You're saying my family has been breeding for a purpose? That our marriages, our children, were all calculated?" "To an extent, yes. But love plays part too. The bonds between guardians and their chosen partners were often genuine, even if the initial meetings were encouraged." Mother Serena's expression softened. "Your parents loved each other deeply, as you love Eleanor. That love is part of what makes the bloodline strong. And our child, your child, is unique. The Thorn line hasn't crossed with the Ashwood line in 300 years. Eleanor's family were also guardians once, though they've forgotten it. The combination of dormant gifts could produce a child of remarkable potential." "Potential for what?" Eleanor's voice came from the doorway. She stood there, supported by Lyra, her face pale but determined. "I won't have my baby treated as some weapon against monsters from bedtime stories." Mother Serena rose and bowed deeply. "Lady Eleanor, you should be resting. I should be part of any conversation about my child's future." Eleanor moved carefully into the room, her hand protective over her belly. "Now explain to me why shadowy organizations are fighting over my unborn baby." "Because your child could be the key to either opening the threshold permanently or sealing it forever," Mother Serena said simply. "The Order believes in transcendence through union with the outer powers. We believe in protection through separation. Your child will have the ability to choose which path humanity follows." "That's insane," Eleanor breathed. "Is it? You've seen what the Order can do. You felt the wrongness of their magic. That's just a taste of what lies beyond the threshold. Imagine that wrongness given form, intelligence, hunger. Imagine it loose in our world with no barriers to constrain it." Silence fell in the chamber. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat, could feel Eleanor trembling beside him. Everything they'd taken for granted about the world had been stripped away, replaced by a reality far stranger and more dangerous. "Show them," Lyra said quietly. "They need to see to truly understand." Mother Serena hesitated, then nodded. She moved to the center of the chamber and placed her hand on a stone that looked no different from any other. But At her touch, it began to glow. The constellations on the ceiling came alive, swirling and dancing. The walls seemed to fade, replaced by visions that made Marcus's eyes water. He saw cities that defied geometry, creatures that violated the laws of nature, battles between forces that left reality itself scarred. And through it all, he saw figures he recognized as ancestors, men and women bearing the thorn features, standing against the darkness with weapons both physical and metaphysical. They fought, they died, they triumphed, they failed. But always they stood between humanity and the hungry void. The vision ended, leaving them gasping in the sudden normalcy of the chamber. Eleanor was crying silently, her hands clasped over her belly. "That's what you're asking my child to inherit?" she whispered. "We're asking your child to have the choice," Mother Serena corrected gently. "To be taught, prepared, and protected until they're ready to make that choice for themselves. The Order would take that away, would use your child as a tool for their own ends. And you wouldn't?" Marcus challenged. "We would teach, guide, protect. But the choice must be freely made, or it has no power." Mother Serena looked tired suddenly, every one of her many years showing. "Captain Thorne, we've held the line for 1,000 years. But we're growing weaker while the Order grows stronger. Your child represents hope, not as a weapon, but as someone who might find a third path we haven't seen." Marcus felt the weight of decision settling on his shoulders, not just for himself or Eleanor, but for their unborn child and possibly the world itself. It was too much, too fast. But then he looked at Sarah, who had infiltrated his home to protect them, at Lyra, who had risked exposure to bring them here, at the keepers who had dedicated their lives to an impossible task. "What would you have us do?" he asked finally. "Rest, heal, learn." Mother Serena smiled slightly. "You're safe here, truly safe, for the first time since this began. Take advantage of that. Let's teach you about your heritage, about the gifts that run in your blood. Make your decisions with full knowledge, not fear or ignorance. And if we decide to leave, to raise our child away from all this, then we'll help you disappear. New names, new lives, somewhere the Order won't think to look." She paused. "But I don't think you'll choose that path. Not once you understand what's at stake." Eleanor spoke up. "I want to learn. If my child is going to inherit this legacy, then I need to understand it. All of it." Mother Serena's smile widened. "Spoken like a true guardian's wife. Very well. Your education begins tomorrow. For now, rest. You've traveled far and survived much. Let us carry the burden for a while." As they were led back to their quarters, Marcus noticed Sarah deep in conversation with one of the younger keepers. She caught his eye and nodded slightly. She was already gathering intelligence, learning the real dynamics of this place. Good. They would need every advantage. That night, as Eleanor slept beside him, Marcus stared at the ceiling and tried to process everything he'd learned. His family weren't just nobles, but guardians. His unborn child might hold the fate of the world. And somewhere out there, the Order was planning their next move. But for now, they were safe. For now, they had allies and knowledge and hope. It would have to be enough. Outside their window, the stars wheeled in patterns that now held new meaning. Ancient and watchful, they gazed down on the monastery where the last keepers prepared for a war that had been raging in shadows for 1,000 years. And in Eleanor's womb, a child grew, innocent of the expectations placed upon it, but carrying in its tiny form the potential to change everything. 6 months had passed since their arrival at Haven Monastery. The mountain air grew colder as winter approached, and Eleanor's pregnancy neared its end. She moved slowly through the ancient halls, one hand supporting her back, the other tracing the carved symbols on the walls that she could now read as easily as her native tongue. Marcus found her in the observatory, gazing through the great telescope at stars that held new meaning for them both. Her face had changed during their time here, still beautiful, but now carrying a wisdom that came from understanding terrible truths. "The midwife says any day now," Eleanor said without turning. She developed that unsettling ability to know when he was near, one of many small changes the awakening of her bloodline gifts had brought. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked, moving to stand beside her. "Is anyone ever ready to birth a child who might save or doom the world?" She tried for lightness, but he heard the fear beneath. "The visions have been getting stronger. I see possibilities branching out like a tree, some bright, some so dark they make me weep." Marcus wrapped his arms around her from behind, feeling their child move beneath his hands. The baby was active, especially at night, as if already eager to greet the stars that would shape its destiny. "Whatever comes, we'll face it together," he promised. "Will we?" Eleanor turned in his arms, her eyes searching his face. "Mother Serena pulled me aside yesterday. She spoke of the trial of inheritance, the ritual our child must undergo at age 7. She tried to make it sound routine, but I could see the truth. Not all children survive it. Then we won't, we will." Eleanor's voice was firm. "Because the alternative is worse. I've seen what happens to untrained guardian children. The power builds until it tears them apart from within, or the Order finds them and turns them into weapons. At least here, with the Keepers, there's a chance for a real life." A knock at the door interrupted them. Sarah entered, no longer the maid they'd known, but a full Keeper initiate, her green robes marking her rapid advancement through their ranks. "Forgive the intrusion," she said, "but we have a problem. Our scouts report Order forces massing in the valley below. Hundreds of them, more than we've seen before. And they have 3 blood mages." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. They'd known this day would come. The monastery's defenses were strong, but not impregnable. The Order had spent months gathering strength for this final assault. "How long?" he asked. 2 days, maybe 3. They're performing some kind of ritual likely to breach our outer wards." Sarah's expression was grim. "Mother Serena has called a war council." The council chamber was packed with keepers from across the monastery. Marcus had learned that Haven housed nearly 200 souls, not just mystics and scholars, but also warriors, craftsmen, and refugees from the Order's persecution. All looked to Mother Serena as she stood before a map of the surrounding mountains. "The situation is clear," she began without preamble. "The Order comes in force, intending to take Lady Eleanor before she gives birth. They believe controlling the child from infancy will ensure its power serves their purposes." "Let them come," growled Brother Thomas, the weapons master who'd been training Marcus in the old fighting techniques. "Our walls have stood for centuries. Against smaller forces," Lyra countered. "This is different. They're bringing siege engines, modern weapons combined with ancient magic. Our traditional defenses won't hold." "Then we evacuate," suggested another keeper. "Scatter to our other sanctuaries, make them chase shadows." "No!" Eleanor's voice cut through the debate. She stood at the chamber's entrance, ignoring the disapproving looks at her presence. "I won't run anymore, and I won't have my child born on some mountain trail like an animal." Mother Serena studied her carefully. "What do you propose, Lady Eleanor?" "We fight, but not just with walls and weapons." Eleanor moved to the map, her finger tracing the valley approaches. "The Order expects traditional resistance. They don't expect us to bring the fight to them." "You're suggesting we attack?" Marcus couldn't hide his surprise. "I'm suggesting we remind them why the Guardians were feared as well as respected." Eleanor's eyes blazed with determination. "They want my child? Let them learn the price of threatening a guardian mother." A murmur ran through the chamber. The keepers had focused on defense for so long that the idea of taking offensive action seemed foreign. But Marcus saw nods among the younger members, those who chafed at always being reactive. "It's suicide," Brother Thomas said bluntly. "We're outnumbered 5-1. In conventional battle, yes," Sarah interjected, "but we have advantages they don't expect. I've been studying the old texts, the battle records from when Guardians actively hunted those who misused the ancient powers. There are techniques we've forgotten, weapons we've kept locked away." Mother Serena was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of centuries. The Vault of Echoes. You're suggesting we open it. What's the Vault of Echoes? Marcus asked. A repository of artifacts too dangerous for regular use, Mother Serena explained. Weapons from the War of Shadows. Items that blur the line between protection and corruption. They've been sealed for 300 years. Because the times didn't warrant their use, Eleanor said. Can anyone argue these times don't? The Order plans to tear open the threshold itself. What good does it do to keep our strongest weapons locked away while reality itself is threatened? The debate raged for hours. Tradition against necessity, caution against desperation. But, in the end, Eleanor's pregnancy tipped the scales. The thought of the Order taking a guardian child, of corrupting it from birth, was too much for even the most conservative keepers to bear. The Vault of Echoes lay deep beneath the monastery, protected by wards that made Marcus's teeth ache just approaching them. Mother Serena led a small group. Marcus, Eleanor, Sarah, Lyra, and Brother Thomas, through passages that grew older with each step. Whatever you see down here, Mother Serena warned, remember that these artifacts were created in desperate times by desperate people. They saved our world, but at a cost. Respect that cost. The vault door was a masterwork of protective magic, covered in symbols that seemed to shift and writhe. Mother Serena placed her hand on the central seal and spoke words in the guardian tongue, a language Marcus had been struggling to learn, one that made reality itself listen and obey. The door swung open with a sound like distant thunder. Inside, the vault stretched farther than should have been possible, its walls lined with alcoves containing objects that radiated power. Some glowed with inner light. Others seemed to drink in the darkness around them. All felt dangerous. The Sundering Blade, Mother Serena said, pointing to a sword that appeared to be forged from solidified starlight. It can cut through any defense, physical or magical. But each strike takes a year from the wielder's life. The Crown of Thoughts, she continued, indicating a circlet of black iron. It allows the wearer to command minds, to turn enemies into allies. But wear it too long, and you forget which thoughts are yours and which you've stolen. They moved deeper into the vault, past artifacts both beautiful and terrible. Marcus found himself drawn to a set of armor that seemed to be made of liquid shadow, while Sarah examined a bow strung with what looked like moonbeams. This, Eleanor said suddenly, stopping before an unassuming pendant. This is what we need. Mother Serena frowned. The heart of Stellara? Lady Eleanor, that artifact hasn't been used since a guardian mother last fought to protect her unborn child, Eleanor finished. I've been dreaming of it for weeks. It's calling to me, because it senses your condition. The heart amplifies maternal protective instincts into tangible force. But the strain, I know the risks. Eleanor reached for the pendant, and it flew to her hand as if eager. The moment it touched her skin, she gasped, her eyes flooding with silver light. Oh, I can feel everything. Every life in this monastery. Every threat approaching. Every possible future spreading out like threads. Eleanor. Marcus moved to support her as she swayed. I'm all right, she said, though her voice carried new harmonics. Better than all right. I understand now. The Order isn't just coming for our child. They're coming to perform a specific ritual. They need guardian blood spilled on sacred ground to weaken the threshold. Then, we can't fight them here, Lyra said immediately. No, we fight them exactly here. But we turn their ritual against them. Eleanor's smile was sharp as a blade. Mother Serena, how quickly can you modify the monastery's ward stones? They worked through the night, preparing defenses both conventional and arcane. The vault's artifacts were distributed among the most skilled keepers, each weapon matched to someone who could handle its cost. Marcus took the Sundering Blade, accepting the price for its power. Sarah claimed the Moonbeam Bow, while Brother Thomas strapped on the shadow armor with grim determination. But the most dramatic change was in Eleanor. The heart of Stellara had awakened something primal in her, a fierce protective rage that made the air around her crackle with power. She moved through the monastery like a force of nature, organizing defenses and inspiring fighters with her mere presence. "You're glorious," Marcus told her as dawn approached. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "But the fear is fuel now. Every time I think of them threatening our child, I grow stronger." She touched her belly. "He knows what's happening. I can feel him preparing too. Our son. I can sense him clearly now. His spirit is already strong." Her expression softened momentarily. "He'll have your stubbornness and my temper. Gods help anyone who stand against him." A horn sounded from the walls. The order had begun their advance. From the monastery's highest tower, they could see the enemy forces spreading across the valley like a dark tide. Siege engines rolled forward, their metal frames inscribed with corrupting runes. Blood mages walked openly, no longer hiding their nature, their red robes like wounds against the snow. "So many," someone whispered. "Good," Eleanor said coldly. "More of them to serve as an example." The first attack came at midday. The order expected their siege engines to shatter the monastery's ancient walls. Instead, the modified ward stones absorbed the impact and reflected it back threefold. Catapults exploded in showers of burning wood. Battering rams crumbled to dust. But the blood mages were ready with counterspells. The real battle began as magic clashed with magic, reality bending and warping where opposing forces met. The sky turned colors that had no names, and snow fell upward in spirals that hurt to watch. Marcus let a strike force out through hidden passages, hitting the Order's flanks with guerrilla tactics. The Sundering Blade lived up to its name, cleaving through magical shields and armor alike. But he could feel the price with each swing, minutes, hours, days of his life burning away. He didn't care. All that mattered was buying time. Sarah's arrows found targets with impossible accuracy, each shot guided by moonlight, even in broad daylight. She moved like a ghost through the battle, appearing where least expected, her father's training combined with keeper techniques, creating a warrior unlike any the Order had faced. But it was Eleanor who truly turned the tide. She appeared on the monastery walls as the blood mages began their grand ritual, the one meant to spill guardian blood and crack the threshold. The heart of Stellara blazed on her chest like a captive star. "You want guardian blood?" she called out, her voice carrying across the battlefield. "Then come and take it." She raised her hands, and the world responded. The ground beneath the Order forces buckled and heaved. The sky opened with rain that burned corruption but healed the pure. Every mother's rage that had ever existed seemed to flow through her, directed at those who would threaten a child. The blood mages tried to counter, but their magic was born of domination and greed. It could not stand against the primal force of protective love amplified by ancient artifact. One by one, their spells shattered and turned back upon them. "Impossible," the lead blood mage gasped as his own power consumed him. "The old ways are dead. The Guardians are weak." "You confused kindness with weakness," Eleanor replied, her eyes now fully silver. "We chose to step back to guide rather than rule. But threaten our children." Her voice dropped to a whisper that nonetheless reached every ear. "Then, remember why empires once bowed to Guardian wishes." The battle became a rout. Order forces fled in terror as the very elements turned against them. Some begged for mercy and received it. Eleanor's rage was focused, not indiscriminate. But those who persisted in their attack found no quarter. As the sun began to set, the last of the Order forces disappeared into the distance. The monastery stood victorious, though scarred by the battle. Cheers rose from the walls, but were quickly silenced as Eleanor collapsed. Marcus caught her before she hit the ground, the sundering blade clattering forgotten. "Eleanor, the baby," she gasped. "He's coming." The battle, the power, it's triggered labor. They carried her inside, Mother Serena and the midwives taking charge. Marcus was pushed out of the birthing chamber despite his protests, left to pace the corridor with Sarah and the others. "She'll be fine," Sarah said, The worry creased her face. She's the strongest person I know. The heart of Stellara, Marcus said quietly. What price will it demand? Whatever it is, she'll pay it gladly for your son's sake. Sarah gripped his shoulder. Have faith. Hours passed. The sounds from within ranged from encouraging to terrifying. Marcus wore a groove in the stone floor with his pacing, the sundering blade's price making him feel every one of his lost years. Finally, as dawn broke, exactly 1 year after his return from the First War, a new sound pierced the air. A baby's cry, strong and healthy. Mother Serena emerged, exhaustion and joy warring on her face. You have a son, Captain, and Lady Eleanor is demanding to see you immediately. Marcus rushed inside to find Eleanor propped up in bed, their son in her arms. She looked drained but triumphant, the heart of Stellara dim but still present on her chest. Meet Alexander, she said softly. Alexander Marcus Thorne, latest in a long line of guardians. The baby was perfect, 10 fingers, 10 toes, and eyes that already seemed to hold ancient wisdom. As Marcus took his son for the first time, Alexander opened those eyes fully, revealing irises that shifted between his father's brown and his mother's blue, with stars dancing in their depths. He's magnificent, Marcus breathed. He's ours, Eleanor corrected, and we've given him a world with a fighting chance. Mother Serena approached carefully. The Order won't give up. This defeat will only make them more desperate. Then, we'll be ready, Marcus said firmly. We'll teach him, train him, prepare him. But first we'll love him. Whatever destiny awaits, he'll face it knowing he was wanted, cherished, protected. The other Keeper sanctuaries are already spreading word of our victory, Lyra reported from the doorway. For the first time in generations, we're taking the offensive. The Order is retreating on all fronts. Good, Eleanor said tiredly. But that's tomorrow's concern. Today, we celebrate new life. As the sun rose fully, bathing the room in golden light, the Thorne family sat together. Warrior father, guardian mother, and a child born of both love and power. Alexander slept peacefully, unaware of the expectations placed upon his tiny shoulders. But his parents knew. They'd fought the darkness and won this day, but greater challenges awaited. The threshold still stood weakened. The Order still plotted. Ancient powers still stirred in the spaces between stars. Yet in that moment, none of it mattered. They were together, they were alive, and they had hope embodied in a newborn's peaceful breathing. I love you, Marcus told Eleanor, kissing her forehead. And I love you, she replied. Both of you, all three of us. We're going to change the world, Marcus, not through force or fear, but by showing that love is the strongest magic of all. Outside, the Keepers began the work of rebuilding, their spirits lifted by victory and the promise of a child who might one day unite the old ways with the new. The war was far from over, but for the first time in centuries, the guardians of humanity had reason to believe they might actually win. Alexander stirred in his sleep, one tiny hand grasping his father's finger with surprising strength. In that grip, Marcus felt the future, uncertain but no longer hopeless. Whatever came next, they would face it as a family. The soldier had returned from war to find another battle waiting, but he'd also found allies, truth, and a love stronger than any magic. And now, with his son's birth, he'd found purpose beyond mere survival. The real story was just beginning.